Biden gets a big win on infrastructure. Pills to treat COVID are coming, and it could spell the end of the pandemic as we know it. And the U.S. reopens to the world today. Monday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Monday, November 8th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hey, Carlo.
J-Wags in the house. How are you, my friend? I missed you.
I missed you too. I was listening to the podcast, though. You and Baker held down the fort as always.
We did our best, but it's great to have you back in the chair. I see the rollers are in. You look great. You sound great. One little piece of housekeeping that I meant to mention on Friday, Jill, by the way, is we've got some new art for the podcast. Like there's a new kind of like logo. So it actually caught me by surprise when I was trying to listen on Spotify. So just if you've noticed that, it's not just you. It's rolling out as part of like a larger rebranding here at Cheddar. So it's like the purple people are gone, and now it's kind of like it's like a teal background. There's pictures of us on there, kind of, but you have to squint to see them. So anyway, just in case you were wondering where our purple mascots went.
I'm glad you mentioned it because I went to listen as well at the end of last week, and I was like, "Where's the podcast? What happened?" And then I'm like, "Wait a minute! They rolled out the new art already."
The new look.
So yeah, it just looked for a lot of green, basically.
Yes, a lot of green.
Okay, let's get to some news here. The big news out of Washington actually came late Friday when President Biden won a major legislative victory that has eluded past presidents in both parties. The passage of a $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill. 13 Republicans joined the majority of Democrats in the House to pass that bill after it was approved by the Senate. The White House plans a big signing ceremony when Congress is back from recess, and Biden's expected to hit the road to heavily promote what is in the bill. The legislation includes billions for roads and bridges, broadband access, replacing lead pipes, sustainability, and more projects in all 50 states. Biden says Americans should start to feel the impacts of the bill in as little as 2 to 3 months.
Yeah, he's got to get out on the road and promote this thing. And I think he should learn, they probably will learn from the mistakes that President Obama made back with his first stimulus bill in the early years of his first term, when he kind of he thought that the work was done after the policy was enacted. But I think, as most politicians know, and Biden probably knows well, that's really only when the work starts, right? Like, you got to get out and explain to people what is in this bill. You got to show people that you can deliver. He should be out there talking about how, Republicans are still rehashing last year's election. Democrats are out there with shovel-ready projects that are going to make your life better in concrete ways. At least that would be the sort of political calculus that I would make if I were in his chair. The other outstanding question, of course, though, is the social spending bill, the Build Back Better bill. That remains tied up in the Senate and is essentially in the hands of Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. Progressives were hoping to get these two things voted on at the same time, remember, but that was probably never going to happen. And the problem is that they sort of gave up their leverage by allowing the infrastructure bill to pass. I'm not saying they should have, I think. I mean, I think it was most important for Biden to get this thing done, but they don't have any leverage now. So I think that what that means is you're going to probably see more parts of the Build Back Better bill get stripped down as it gets closer to a vote in the Senate.
So notably, as you mentioned, some progressives still voted no on this bipartisan plan. That includes Jamal Bowman of New York, Cori Bush, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib.
The squad.
There's
basically
a lot of good stuff in the bill, though, and in this package. And so you do have to wonder in what the calculation is, because it was going to pass anyway. So don't you want to be able to run on saying, hey, I voted for $10 billion to improve the New York City subway. Right, there's a lot of stuff that's in here. I think I agree with you. I think Biden and his team should stay on top of this and basically follow the money as it's being spent and say, hey, look, this project in this airport in Denver that's getting billions of dollars, that's thanks to the Build Back Better plan. So I think we should see exactly where that money is going. This new electric car charging station, Build Back Better plan.
Yeah, exactly. They should have his
It is
face on those things.
incredible. It is incredible, though, that the best piece of news of the Biden presidency happened at
Yeah.
11:30 on a Friday night. Okay, that is known in the news business as the Friday news dump. That is when you basically put your bad news out and hope
Yeah,
that no
right.
one's paying attention. Um, and again, this is like the best thing that happened probably to the Biden presidency since he took office.
Yeah, yeah. I guess he couldn't really control the timing of this vote. I think they were probably trying to get it done during the day on Friday, but Pelosi couldn't whip her votes until late at night. But yeah, I think that's why, again, you're going to see him get out on the road. You're going to see a big signing ceremony, and we'll see. We'll see if it breaks through. I think that once people start seeing the actual impacts of these things, when they're going over a crumbling bridge on their way to work, and there's a big sign in front of it that's like, this bridge is being repaired because of this infrastructure bill. I think that could certainly help his poll numbers, which are a disaster at the moment.
Pfizer is expected to submit its antiviral COVID pill to the FDA for approval in the coming days after that company released data Friday showing that it was remarkably effective. The pill cut the risk of hospitalizations for high-risk patients by 90% in trials when taken in combination with an old HIV drug. So that would be even better than Merck's antiviral pill, which is currently in front of regulators. Former FDA Chief Scott Gottlieb said that the COVID pills, if approved, could mean that the end of the pandemic is in sight in the United States.
Yeah, he was all over this this weekend. He said on Face the Nation that January, February, this thing could essentially be over. And by this thing, I mean the pandemic. And I think that these antiviral pills, I did a report on these for a show on Cheddar on Friday. So I was digging a lot into this data, and this is really something. These things they're not like, you should still get vaccinated. Obviously, they're not vaccines, but for people who can't or won't get vaccinated, these things are basically going to keep you from dying if you are at risk of dying. I mean, look at what antivirals did for the AIDS crisis, right? I think it's going to be sort of a similar thing with COVID. It basically keeps the virus from becoming a death sentence for the people who are most at risk of dying. Plus, it's just easy, right? It's easy to get a prescription. It's easy to take, a couple pills every day for a week. These pills are going to be cheap because they're going to be able to be generic, which is obviously going to go a long way in getting them into the hands of people that really need them in places like sub-Saharan Africa, where there's basically been no vaccination penetration so far.
Yeah, and look, when you talk about the other treatments that are out there, obviously we have the Merck pill, but the monoclonal antibody treatments, you have to go into a hospital for that. It's not
right.
easy. You have to have access. You have to have the doctor. Obviously, you would need a prescription with these pills, but you need a doctor to basically get you into the hospital. The trial for this, by the way, is so effective and so clear right away that they actually cut the trial short. Pfizer did, because they were just like, these pills are going to save people's lives.
Yeah, exactly.
So ethically, they just need to get them out there. Okay,
Pfizer
another
just
sign of
crushing it, by the way, incredible, right? This coming basically, I think, almost in a year to the day since their vaccine trials came out. I think that was like this time last year when we all just breathed that heavy sigh of relief when we were like, oh my God, they actually did it. We actually have a vaccine for this thing. We forget about that. We forget how incredible that was, right? Because it became this like political football. But we were just sitting here. We didn't know this time last year. We were like, is this just going to go on forever until we all get COVID and have natural immunity? And they came out with a 95% effective vaccine. It was amazing.
Another sign of things getting back to normal, the U.S. reopens for fully vaccinated international travelers today, ending a 20-month travel ban that has kept foreign tourists largely out of the country. The major airlines are seeing huge increases in bookings and expect completely full international flights for at least the next few weeks as they scale up their schedules to 2019 levels. Land crossings at the Mexican and Canadian borders also expected to see long lines of cars waiting to get in for the foreseeable future.
Oh, it's about time that this day has come. I've actually been tracking Delta Flight 106 from Sao Paulo to Atlanta Hartsfield, which is due to land in a couple hours. That's the first international flight under these new rules coming into the country. Delta
like you're
says
physically tracking it as it's in the air.
Yeah, I'm on FlightAware. I know it's weird. I do weird stuff like that sometimes, but Anyway, Delta says 450% increase in international bookings over the last couple of weeks. And then you have United, which was hit hardest by this travel ban because most of its schedule is international. They say they're expecting 30,000 inbound passengers just today. This, of course, also just a big deal for the economies of cities like New York, which are seriously dependent on tourism. And one of the strangest things about being in New York City lately has just been the notable lack in foreign tourists, which of course is nice when you're kind of just like taking the subway or walking around and you don't have to navigate them on the sidewalks. But, that's really bad for the economy to not have people from Europe and Asia coming in spending their money, which is now going to hopefully happen in time for the holidays.
The latest now on this tragic story out of Houston over the weekend. 2 investigations have been launched into Friday night's Astroworld Music Festival, where 8 young people were killed when fans were crushed against the stage. The rapper Travis Scott had just started his headlining set when the crowd crush began. He's facing questions over why he continued to perform as first responders were in the midst of dealing with this mass casualty event. He actually finished his whole set. His girlfriend, Kylie Jenner, and Scott saying that they were unaware of what was happening until later. The Houston police are also investigating reports that someone in the crowd was injecting people with drugs after several concert goers had to be revived with the anti-overdose drug Narcan.
That was weird. I'm waiting to hear more about that. I'd never heard of something like that before, and it's unclear if that has to do with why people were sort of rushing the stage. This is now the worst mass casualty event at a concert in the United States since the Station nightclub fire in Rhode Island, which was, I think, almost 20 years ago now. Really one of the worst stories just ever had to cover. But crowd crush at music festivals, this is something that I think a lot of people have probably experienced, at least sort of the, not a terrible version of it, if that makes sense. I mean, I have personally. I was once in a crowd at a music festival, and I started to sort of feel that when like the crowd kind of starts to move in its own, you know what I'm talking about, when like the crowd kind of gets its own like life almost. I was picked up off the ground by like the force of the movement. It's just one of the most helpless feelings I've ever felt. I don't know if anyone else has ever been in a situation like that, so I can just imagine how terrifying this must have been for these people. But yeah, there are a lot of videos on social media showing people in the audience trying to get help. Some people were sort of climbing a camera pedestal, trying to get the camera operator to shut the thing down, and he was telling them like, no, go back. So it just sounds like there was a lot of confusion, which perhaps accounts for why this show wasn't immediately stopped.
So the victims are all, we mentioned young people. They're all younger than 30. 2 of them are teenagers. It's really terrible. Just tragic. Think about it. You're going out just to see a concert. This festival is known to get a little bit rowdy. I was listening to an interview with a woman who was there, and she said she's been there before. She said it seemed like the vibe was already almost like more rowdy and aggressive, even before the concert even before Travis Scott took the stage. So she fell. She was caught up in the crowd. She said it was like basically like dominoes, where just one person fell. What you described happened, where the crowd started to get a life of its own, and just kind of you basically just had to move with wherever the crowd was going, you had to go. People started to panic. People started to drop. She said there were just piles of people, one on top of the other. She actually said that she was underneath a couple of people and had to bite somebody. Had to physically bite their leg in order for them to move. And she's like, I can't even believe I did this, but it was life or death. I had to get up. And she said, luckily, a couple of people were able to help her get up. And that's why she even survived. Just absolutely frightening. And hopefully something good can come out of this, where there will be some sort of changes so that, I know that these festivals are fun and people like going, but I don't know. That just is not safe.
Well, it sounds like this was it sounds like this was a failure of the venue. When you go to these music festivals, a lot of the times they keep you sort of in like pens, which I think is to to prevent this kind of thing from happening. So it's not just this like one giant unwieldy crowd, and it doesn't seem like that was the case here. But there are venues are supposed to be able to prevent this sort of thing from happening. Clearly, there was a major failure here.
The Green Bay Packers fell apart yesterday without Aaron Rodgers at the helm, losing to the Kansas City Chiefs 13-7. Rodgers was out on COVID protocol after he tested positive last week. He explained his decision not to get vaccinated in a radio show interview in which Rodgers said that he'd consulted with Joe Rogan. He claimed to be allergic to the mRNA vaccines, had consulted, he'd been worried about fertility issues. He then misquoted Martin Luther King and used the "my body, my choice" defense. So basically, the kitchen sink here, throwing everything against the wall to see what would stick.
I got to say, when I saw this, this was also on Friday. There was a lot of news on Friday. He really hit the cycle, yeah, when it comes to the anti-vaccine talking points. Almost impressive. But at the in the Packers game yesterday, the Fox pregame show tore into him. Even Terry Bradshaw out there calling Rodgers a liar. He could get fined by the NFL. Not that that matters much to somebody like him. But I thought that it was notable that in that radio show interview, Rodgers called this sort of like cancel culture. He pointed to the, quote, woke mob trying to cancel him, which I don't know. Have you noticed that like the stock response now for any public figure when they get caught either lying or just being stupid is like, just blame it on cancel culture or like wokeness or something. It's like, dude, just tell the truth, man. People are mad because you misled them. I mean, it has nothing to do with cancel culture. Cancel culture is a real thing, but this is not that.
Exactly. And it almost, like, as we say, like if everything's cancel culture, nothing's cancel culture.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
Cancel culture there is problematic. So I think that we do need to tackle that, but 100%.
Sure.
And he's going to be just fine, by the way. No one's really canceling him. He's just going through a little bit of bad press. I'm sure he's going to be back out there. As you said, so he basically said, when asked if he was vaccinated, he said he was inoculated, right? Is that what? Oh no, excuse me. He said he was immunized. Immunized, but so he was trying to like kind of get around it with word games. But
that's
the whole thing. It's like you just lied. If you didn't want to get the vaccine,
say it.
You know, he could have just followed the protocol for the people who didn't want to get the vaccine for his team. It's not like in New York where he wouldn't have been able to play.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think, and again, that's why people are mad. Like, you have a responsibility as a public figure to tell the truth and not mislead people. It's like really that simple. How much of this also is, I mean, his girlfriend is Shailene Woodley, right? Isn't she also sort of like a, actually, I don't want to say that because I don't know for a fact. I was going to say, you know, she's sort of like a homeopathic kind of person. I think maybe she had something to do with this. I'm not sure.
Okay, the New York City Marathon returned to the city this weekend after a pandemic hiatus. Shailene Flanagan saved the best for last in her grueling quest to run all of the world's major marathons in 6 weeks. The retired American long-distance runner completed the New York City Marathon in 2 hours, 33 minutes, and 32 seconds, her best time of any race. So she's now succeeded in her goal of running all of the major marathons in under 3 hours. Incredible.
Man, absolutely incredible. Meanwhile, the Olympic bronze medalist Molly Seidel broke the record for fastest time in New York by any American woman, and she did it with a couple of broken ribs, which she just mentioned in an interview, sort of like threw that out there. Like, oh, yeah, I did this. I ran this incredible time, and also my ribs were broken, which is like, how did you even do that? But yeah, I don't know if I guess you didn't get to see because you're in Long Island, but I was out there yesterday. They ran right past my apartment, and it was really great. You know, it was really great to see all the runners out there cheering them on. It really started. You're really getting the sense, I think, that things are finally starting to get back to normal. And I know that we've said that before, but I really think that we're at the beginning of the real end here.
I've run the marathon 3 times. One of the things I'm most proud of in my life. Yes, I ran the New York City Marathon 3 times.
I knew you did it once. I didn't know 3 times. I knew you did it once. I didn't know you've done it multiple times. Jeez.
Yeah. I somehow went back for more. It's because it's the best day ever. It's the training. Yeah. The training is really what's grueling, but the action and the marathon. Yes, it's the last 5-6 miles are torturous, but the day itself, it's just incredible. You basically. The starting line at the Verrazano Bridge, they're blasting Frank Sinatra's New York, New York.
Yeah,
I mean, you get the chills.
awesome.
You run over the bridge, you run through all 5 boroughs. Everyone's out cheering. It is just, there's nothing like it. And anyone can do it. You don't have to. So a lot of people say, nah, I'm not a runner. I wasn't built for running. Anyone can do it. But
there's no way I could run a marathon. No way. No chance.
You got to start slow. You start with a mile and you eventually build up. Anyway, I'm not here to, excuse my mic. I just got so passionate about this that I almost hit it over. I'm not trying to convince anyone to run a marathon. I'm just kudos to them. And it is, and for New York City, it's such an exciting day for the city. And just, all these runners, congratulations.
Yeah. Amazing.
Okay, now for a little more to know before you go. A federal appeals court has temporarily blocked the White House's vaccine mandate for large employers, signaling an uphill battle for the administration in its attempts to get most private companies to institute a vax or test policy by January 4th.
Yeah, that stay doesn't actually affect the law going into or the mandate going into effect. It's just something to keep an eye on. The Prime Minister of Iraq this weekend surviving a brazen assassination attempt when a drone packed with explosive targeted his house in Baghdad while he was asleep at home. Prime Minister was not injured, though several of his security staffers were. No one disclaimed responsibility for the attempted assassination. But we talked about this recently. I forget in what context, but I was sort of predicting that this is something that we're going to start to see more of is, assassination by drones. Drones are the scariest thing that I think exists right now. There's so much, they can do so much, and we are so ill prepared to deal with it. It's like, I don't really know what the answer is.
Listen, when you think about Iraq, you immediately think about IEDs, the improvised explosive devices, or suicide attacks. This is the next phase of this is the future of warfare. Not only warfare, not only in this type of thing that you would think about, but there's concerns about enemies using drones to take out a power grid, for example.
Right.
And there's not that much that the military, at least at this point, can do to stop it.
That's the scary part. Yep.
Shares of Tesla down 5% this morning after Elon Musk conducted a Twitter poll asking people whether he should sell a big chunk of his stake in the company. Musk promised to abide by the outcome of the poll, in which a majority of respondents voted for him to sell.
3.5
by the
million
sword,
people.
Die by the sword. He has to do it, right?
I guess. Yeah, he says he will. I think that probably has something to do with, a tax bill coming, I would suspect. Also, I just wanted to get on record with this. Multiple Ivy League campuses evacuated over the weekend after a series of what appears to be coordinated bomb threats. Cornell, Columbia, and Brown universities all say that they received the threats around the same time, ordered evacuations at several campus buildings. People were let back on. The threats deemed to be a hoax, but clearly something up here.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe can still bring people out. Eternals beat the global box office openings of both Black Widow and Shang-Chi, bringing in $162 million worldwide in its opening weekend. That is the second best opening of the pandemic for a Hollywood blockbuster. Fans came out in droves for the latest installment in the MCU, despite the obscure characters, bad reviews, and mediocre audience scores.
And if you didn't catch SNL this weekend, you missed what is actually a pretty good show, I would say. Maybe the best of the season so far. New cast member James Austin Johnson debuted his Donald Trump impression, which is the impression that I think got him hired on the show, and it's incredible if you haven't seen it. Cecily Strong also getting accolades for a candid weekend update segment that she did about abortion rights. And Dionne Warwick stopped by to sing a duet with Ego Nwodim, who plays the diva on the show. All in all, pretty good.
Okay, Carlo, we got to wrap. That is what you need to know for Monday, November 8th.
See you guys tomorrow.